Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Women of Golf Show. I'm Ted Odorico, and right alongside, of course, each and every week is none other than Legends Tour player and PGA professional, Cindy Miller, and we are the hosts of the Women of Golf Show. Good morning, Cindy. How are you?
I'm great, Ted. How are you?
Well, my tongue's a little tied this morning, so hopefully I can untie that before our guest comes on in the second half. But other than that, I'm doing really well. Cindy, before we start, let me just remind everybody, of course, that this broadcast is live every Tuesday morning from 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern here on the blogtalkradio.com network. And we've got a number of ways that you can tune in. Obviously, you can go to blogtalkradio.com, and up in the search key, you can type in Women of Golf. And from 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern on Tuesday mornings, we, of course, are live. But if you can't join us live, you can scroll down on that page, and in the on-demand section, all of our previously aired shows, including today, you can find there in their entirety, as, of course, they are all auto-recorded. You can also go to iTunes or Stitcher.com, and under the podcast section, you can type in, again, Women of Golf, and that will take you there as well if you choose to listen under those mediums. Always would love to hear from you. You're welcome to call in during our live broadcast. The number to call is area code 347-945-5855. And we always would love to hear from you by email as well. You can reach out to either Cindy or I at cindy@cindymillergolf.com, or my email is ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. But we want to take this opportunity and thank you for tuning in live this morning with us. We got a great show. Cindy, we're going to be wrapping up your Own Your Game Lite, as we've called it, series, which is just a shorter version of your overall series, with part 3 this week. And that's going to be talking about the mind control and also mental preparation. We'll talk about that. And then a little bit later on in the show, we're going to be joined by our very special guest, Katherine Roberts. Of course, she's the founder and president of Yoga for Golfers, and we'll tell you a little bit more about her as we get closer to that time. But Cindy, you're on the road right now. Where are you headed?
I am going to help someone's golf game. So I've got to go give a lesson.
Oh, very good. So Cindy's on her way to the lesson tee. So if you want to get help with your game and you're in Cindy's area, you can certainly, again, reach out to her at cindy@cindymillergolf.com. All right, Cindy, let's talk about, let me just do a real quick recap of the first two parts, just for those that maybe missed that. You want to make sure, as I said, you go back and listen to those shows, and you get a little bit of an idea of what we've been talking about in this series. But the first series, of course, was sort of looking back and taking stock. So as we roll into the off season for some, this is a time to reflect, to look at what we did well and maybe what still needs some work, and really do an honest assessment of yourself and decide what you're willing to do to improve your golf game. Then in part 2, which was last week, we talked about seeking professional help. And, do you need help? Do you have a mentor, a coach, or some guidance? And we talked about the swing and its skill acquisition and becoming a better ball striker and things like that. So more of the physical part of the game, if you will. And then this week, we're going to talk about mind control and mental preparation. And the first one, Cindy, on that category is obviously talking about the head, mind management and thought control. Share a few thoughts about that and why that is important.
Well, your mind is your control tower, so you can't swing the club unless you tell yourself to swing the club. So you need to know exactly what your process is, and it might be different for everyone depending on your behavior style, what motivates you to action, and what your learning style is. So the more you know about yourself, first, that's almost like a prerequisite. You need to know who you are, how you think, what motivates you, and what your learning style is, and then you can develop a pre-shot routine and a process to produce, successful golf shots.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. And this is an area I think more so than the physical side of the game, and I'm sure you would agree with this. I think this is an area of the game that really hinders most amateur golfers, is they get too much going on in the head and ultimately end up affecting the rest of their game. And I'll give you an example. You get somebody that stands up on the first tee, and the first thing they're thinking about is all the trouble that they see out there. They're thinking about the people that might be standing around, maybe the group behind that's following them. They see the marshal over there perhaps, and they're a little bit nervous because he's tapping his foot there waiting for them to tee off, and so that they can keep the flow of the course moving. So there's a lot of things that creep in, and people don't want to look bad on the golf course, so the nerves start creeping in. And this is something that the mind kind of plays tricks on. Would you agree with that, Cindy?
Absolutely. I'm not sure that people are aware of their own personal thoughts. So step number one would be, what am I thinking right now, and is this helping or hindering me? So am I paying attention to the task at hand? If we were to be inside of any tour player's brain and could hear their thoughts, they would say, okay, this is a dogleg right. There's a bunker on the right side. I'm going to aim down the left side of the fairway. What's my intermediate target? They walk behind the ball. They step in. They're always focused on the task at hand, and they're thinking about what they're doing while they're doing it. They're not thinking about, if I do this and I do that, or I'm 3 under par and I got to be careful, and all those other conversations aren't going on. They know how to turn it on and turn it off. And I think if most amateurs could learn their own personal process, that their scores would go down, even if they hit it not so good. So you can lower your score just by thinking better.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And the other thing, too, that, if you really notice, and Cindy, obviously you're a tour player, so you've been out there and you've had to go through this process. But I think one of the other things, too, is it's not that the pros aren't aware of what hazards or what troubles may lurk on any given hole. It's that they don't focus on that. They do a quick assessment as they come up to the hole. They know what's there, and they formulate a game plan, or they may already have a game plan of how, especially if it's a course they've played with some familiarity, they already know how they want to play that hole. So as you said, they focus on the task at hand, and they're not sitting there thinking about that fairway bunker out there or the creek that crosses the middle of the fairway about whether they should hit over it or hit short. They already know in their mind, they've already made that decision, and that becomes part of their pre-shot routine, is doing that quick assessment and then preparing themselves for whatever shot might be needed. Would that be fair, accurate assessment?
Absolutely. So they acknowledge trouble, and I call it acknowledging stupid. Where would stupid fall? And they don't give it any power because your brain doesn't hear a negative. So if you say to yourself, don't go in the bunker, you jerk, your brain just heard, go in the bunker, you jerk. So they acknowledge where the trouble is, and then they play to the safe zone, if you will. And depending on their behavior style, like a high D personality might only need a 50-50 chance of pulling off a risk, whereas a high S person would need maybe a 70-30 chance of pulling off a high risk to try to carry a bunker. They're very aware of what they're doing. They know what they can do, what kind of shots they can produce. They have a very keen awareness of their skills and talents, and then they make a clear decision, and then they commit to that decision. So they're never saying, don't hit it in the bunker. Now, you can see on live telecasts, when guys back away and they might look at a person in the gallery, sometimes they might be pretending that someone distracted them, when in reality they could be hearing the gerbil in their head talking about trouble or not focusing on the task at hand. They stop, they reset, and focus, and then they proceed to produce the shot. So absolutely, you have to acknowledge where the trouble is, and then you have to play away from. So it's always got to be a positive. I'm going to hit it here rather than I'm not going to hit it there.
Yeah, and another great point that you raise is because they know what their skills or their abilities are, they also know their limitations. And if they, Jack Nicklaus, used to talk about how when he came to a hole that didn't fit his eye, he knew how to play. He played that hole differently than he would a hole that, that he was looking at like a T-bone steak. He would think in his mind, okay, I know that if I can get away with a par, I'm going to be happy with that. I'm not going to try anything too aggressive here because this hole doesn't fit my eye. So he knew what his limitations were when he came up to that hole, and he knew what he had to do in order to get through to the next hole. So he capitalized on the holes that he knew he had the greatest chance of success on, and he played much more conservatively on a hole that, as I said, didn't fit his eye. And that's extremely important. And a lot of players, especially our amateur golfers, as you said, they get caught up in all of the hyperbole that goes on through their mind. And this really goes to the second point here, Cindy, and that is the body does what the mind tells it. If you're filling your head with all of this drama and all of this anxiety, your body is naturally going to react to that. And I know you've already stated that, but talk a little bit more of the importance about really keeping a clear mind and not letting it get cluttered with all kinds of anxiety and issues. Talk a little bit more about that if you wouldn't mind.
Well, again, I think it depends on your history. So many people add up their score, and when you add up your score, and you're playing protect, and you're not in the present moment. So again, you need to know what your skills and talents are, what your limitations are, and let's say somebody wants to shoot under 95 every time they play golf. Well, clearly that's just it's having 13 bogeys and 5 doubles. And if sometimes they don't think clearly enough to say, oh, well, I could do that. Okay, why don't you do that? Because you're not staying focused on the task at hand. You're either remembering a past failure or you're trying to produce a future and you're not staying in the present. So you have to know that if you ask 10 tour players what it felt like when they played their best round of golf, they would probably tell you they really had no idea what they were shooting. And they were so focused on each shot, and they got done, and it seemed easy and, fluid, whatever kind of word you want to use. And then they added it up. They were like, whoa, I can't believe I just shot that. So you need to know that playing real well, everybody would like to say, oh, I'd like to shoot 65 every day. Well, that doesn't happen. So I would ask or research, I would Google that. What did tour players say after they shot the best round of their life? What did they think? What were they feeling? There's the proof. And if you can emulate that at all, you're going to play better.
Yeah, I would rather a player emulate that than try to emulate the tour player's swing, because we are all, as you know, Cindy, we're all uniquely different, and more players are apt to try and emulate a tour player that they see. And that doesn't mean, if you're a similar build or a similar height, you might have certain similar characteristics in your swing mechanics. But I would rather them, as you just said, I would rather them emulate, how they handle themselves on the golf course and how their minds are working and what they're thinking about when they get off the golf course. An interesting point too, Cindy, that, if you notice at most tour events and you listen to the players, a lot of times they'll interview them, of course, after the round, and most of the players will say the same thing. They don't look at the scoreboard. Occasionally they might glance up, but they're not following that scoreboard all the way around to see, where they're at or who's leading or how many, positions back they are, because that's going to be to their own detriment. Because if, again, like you said, racking up the score. I mean, I don't know how many players I've played with where they'll keep score and they want to know hole by hole where they're at because they're trying to shoot a certain number. And, coming into the last 3 holes, an example, they think to themselves, well, I got to shoot up, whatever, to break, as you said, 95 or break 90 or even 100. And all of a sudden anxiety starts creeping in because, as you said, they now get into protect mode and they're not really playing fluidly or in a comfortable moment. They're thinking about, well, I've got to shoot this. And then when they don't shoot the score on that hole, then the anxiety intensifies on the next hole because now they've got to maybe make up a stroke or two in order to hit their target. So I think the best advice I would give for a player is go out there, focus on the individual tasks for each hole, each shot, and forget about the score and add it up when you get to the 19th hole and maybe have a drink or two or a bite to eat at the end of the round and add it up then and forget about what your score is during the round, and I think you'll have much more success. Cindy, another part of this is not just a thought process, but also how our emotions are affected. Emotionally, we are very emotional creatures by habit, and if our head is getting cluttered all the time with thoughts that are not going to be conducive to playing good golf, it's going to affect our emotions. We're going to be down. We're going to be angry and frustrated. This is an area, too, that a lot of professionals have had to learn, and that is to control their emotions. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Well, again, it goes back to being aware of what you're thinking and saying to yourself. So you need to know that when you're trying too hard to control something and you're not focused on the task at hand, the little gerbil in your head's going to go, oh, see, you do that all the time. Then you're going to try to defend yourself. Then you're going to get all wigged out. Then you're going to start breathing fast. Then you're going to start sweating. And then your muscles are going to lock up. And then you can't swing. So it's like a downward spiral. And it all starts with a little doubt or apprehension. And when that happens, you are done. So, again, being very aware of it will help you a lot. I got to say one thing. One thing that really bothers me about some golf instructors is they're always telling people what they're doing wrong, and they're trying to make them look like tour players, as you said. Stop trying to make your swing look like a tour player and start thinking like a tour player. And some of the stuff with all this technology, with TrackMan, and I know that myself, if I were to focus on my numbers and how bad my numbers are, that is not doing anything to help my confidence. And then I feel like, oh, my God, you're old, you can't do this is ridiculous.
Right.
And the chatter in my head is not going to help me. So I would urge our listeners to find someone who believes in you, and I don't want to say a fake cheerleader, but you need positive thoughts, and you need to know that I got news for you. I can help anybody make a half swing and hit the ball straight down the fairway if they're willing to do that. And they will shoot better, especially if we teach them how to think. So that's a pet peeve of mine. You get all these things and contraptions stuck on somebody, and you can't play golf with your left brain. You've got to play golf with your right brain. And if you're paying all this money to go get all this technology, and I don't believe you're going to get results. It's only going to confuse you.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. And there is a place certainly for technology. It does help, but you're exactly right. If you're getting caught up in all the numbers all the time, and anybody, even the best of the players at times, would be depressed if they focused on the numbers all the time. And, Cindy, we've talked about here really some of the things and how we can be affected. But let's just take a moment or two, if we can, and talk about what a player should be. Let's take our amateur player. He's driven up to the golf course. He's warmed up. He's hitting pretty good, and he's now made his way for the first tee. So what should be going through his or her mind as they step up to the first tee? What should they be thinking of? We've already talked about what they shouldn't be doing. What should they do in order to help start that round off in the best possible manner?
Well, again, it depends on the hole and their shot pattern. So let's say they fade the ball or they slice it, and it's a dog leg left, and there's trees on the corner. They've got to stop and say, okay, where should I aim and start this ball so that it has the freedom to go to the right, and that slice will put me in the center of the fairway. They also have to be very aware of what if they don't slice it and they hit the dreaded straight shot when they're anticipating a fade.
Right.
So they need to aim it probably right at the corner, so if they hit it straight, they're fine. If they fade it a little bit, they're in the middle of the fairway, and if they fade it a lot, they're in the right rough. So all three possibilities give them a shot at the green.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
Sense?
No, that's perfect sense. And I'm just going to add something else to it as well, Cindy, and that is the other thing that a lot of amateur players make the biggest mistake is they automatically reach for the driver when they're coming up to the first tee. They think that that's the club they need to hit with. And even taking your example, Cindy, the driver might not be the best play. Depending on how long the hole is, they might need to ratchet it back and maybe hit a fairway wood or even a hybrid club off the tee, because if the hole is a shorter hole, they don't want to run it through the fairway and not only get in the rough, but maybe get into other trouble. Maybe there's some trees on the other side. So knowing your yardages as well when you come up there, understanding the distances, and more importantly, noting the distances that you're hitting your clubs is critical, because that's going to make part of your decision-making process as well. So, in addition to what you said, Cindy, I think also understanding that it's okay sometimes to not grab for the first club in the bag, to think about it a little bit, as you're walking up there and say, okay, I know this hole, I've played it before, I know that I'm going to hit my driver through that fairway, so maybe I need to choose a different club. And sometimes it might be, as I said, it could be a hybrid, it could be, it might even be a longer iron, just to get yourself in position. And yes, I know it's a dog leg, but I would rather be in good position than to block it out, or to, as you said, you hit that dreaded straight shot because you've aimed too far to the left, and now you're in the woods, and now you're in a hole. You've started that round off in a miserable context. So you want to make sure that you make smart choices, and that adds into also your pre-shot routine. Is your pre-thought routine is how you handle yourself when you get to the first tee. And then you'll find, if you take those steps that we're suggesting, that your overall round will be much more enjoyable, because you'll be, instead of thinking about all the trouble, now you're making conscious decisions and smart decisions like the pros do. And we would rather you play like the pro in your thought process than, as we pointed out earlier, than trying to match your swing to look like your favorite player on tour. Any final thoughts on that, Cindy?
I totally agree. And one more thing that I would add is I would challenge yourself, again, depending on where you are. If you're going out to play golf today, I would say, okay, what is one goal that I commit to that I can control all day long?
Yes.
So you can't control what you shoot. You can't control every swing. So maybe it's, I'm going to make sure that I think for 35 seconds, I plan, and I produce the best shot I can at the time all day long. So you might need a little anchor to jar you. You're walking down the fairway, it's time to hit your second shot. Oh, wait, what are we doing now? Okay, we got 155, it's uphill, the wind's in our face, it's playing about 170. What club do I hit 170? Is there a bunker in the front? There's a bunker in the front, play at 180. So if I miss it, I'm still on the green, walk back behind, pick out an intermediate target, step up, swing. Boom, next.
Yep.
So if you did that and you focused on each shot during a whole round, I guarantee you're going to play better.
Yeah. And also, too, just another thought, too, Cindy, and we've talked about this before on the show, is in between shots, especially if you've got to walk up the fairway a little ways, you don't have to be necessarily thinking about the next shot. You can think about anything. Maybe you've got grandchildren. You can think about them a little bit. Sometimes you have to take your mind out of the game a little bit just to alleviate the pressure. And then when you get up to your ball and you've assessed it again, then you can re-engage in the task at hand. But sometimes you have to give your mind a little bit of a break because, as we've talked about before, Cindy, nobody can keep focused 100% on their golf game for 4.5 hours, which is, a typical round, because otherwise they're just going to get so discombobulated that they're just going to the pressure's just going to mount, and they're not going to be able to successfully navigate the golf course because they're constantly in that golf mode. And sometimes you just have to, as I say, walk around and smell the flowers a little bit and have some fun, enjoy your round, make it a pleasurable experience and not just, fist clenched and knuckles white, that sort of thing. So food for thought. Great discussion this morning, as always, Cindy. All right, we got our very special guest waiting here in the wings, so let me bring her on board, and let me just tell you a little bit about her. She's been on the show before, and she's been a guest on Golf Talk Live, not only as a guest, but also on the Coach's Corner panel as well as here on the Women of Golf show. Of course, I'm talking about Katherine Roberts, the founder and president of Yoga for Golfers. She's also president for Yoga for Baseball and also Roberts Kinetic Yoga for Sports. She's a certified yoga instructor for over 20 years. She's TPI, FMS, and NG360 certified, educated in PRI, and also a Nike Swoosh Elite athlete and advisory staff member for the Gray Institute, Applied Functional Science and Chain Reaction Biomechanics. A lot in her accolades here, and just a great young lady, and certainly an asset to this sport. So let's welcome, Cindy, our very special guest this morning, Katherine Roberts.
Good morning.
Good morning, you two.
What are you
How are you
up
doing,
to?
Katherine?
I hear you're having a little bit of fun today.
Oh, my goodness. Well, we are having so much fun right now. We are smack dab in the middle of an 8-day Yoga for Golfers certification program. It's level 1 and level 2, and it's been great. It's really great to be able to, share our methodologies and, from the physical perspective and the psychological and coaching perspective with our students, because then they take it out and they teach it to other people, which is always a blessing. That's what we're about, right? Spreading the word and helping to change the game.
Absolutely.
Well said. Let me just start by saying, Katherine, obviously welcome to the show, but just for the benefit of maybe some of those that aren't familiar with your program, just tell us a little bit about Yoga for Golfers, how you sort of came up with that. Obviously, I know you've been involved with yoga for a long time, but sort of how that came about and really what's the premise behind it.
Well, how it came about was based on my own experience of taking up yoga as a golfer. I've been a golfer my whole life. And I was playing to about a 28, and I got hooked up with a woman. I was out playing as a single, and she was a 5 handicap. And I started talking to her, and I thought, well, what is she doing? And she was a yoga instructor, and this was 18 years ago. Well, 18 years ago, yoga wasn't on every street corner the way that it is today. And at the time, I had a corporate job, and I was in sales, but I was always involved in fitness and group fitness, and, I've played every sport in my life. And I took up yoga, and my handicap went from a 26 to 28, basically, down to a 16 very, very quickly. Well, I fell in love with yoga so much, I quit my corporate job. Well, I live out in Scottsdale in the winters and Vancouver, Canada in the summers, and I was teaching traditional yoga at all of these golf courses in North Scottsdale. Well, my students were coming back to me and saying, my back doesn't hurt anymore when I play. I have much better focus. I'm hitting the ball further than I've ever hit it in the past. And I said, I'm going to develop a program called Yoga for Golfers. And that was 17 years ago. I started in 2000. Fast forward, we now have certified instructors in 30 countries. I've authored 2 books. We have infinite amounts of digital media, for sale for people to use at home. We have classes going on all over the globe. And, my intention of creating it was to, bring the gifts of yoga to a demographic of people that won't normally walk into a yoga studio, which is why all of our classes are held at golf facilities and not at yoga studios. And I wanted to help people, play better golf and enjoy the game that they love more. And, one of our taglines is play better, play longer, and play stronger. And, for us, as we know, and I'm sure for most of the listeners, golf is not just a sport, but it's an integral part of our lives. And if we don't take care of our bodies and our minds, we can lose that. And I don't want to see that happen to anyone.
Yeah, I agree. Well said. What's some of the misconceptions, do you think, that people have with yoga that, they see yoga on television or they see it, at some facility and they say, well, that's not for me. Explain some of the misconceptions that maybe people might have and some of the benefits. I mean, you've named a few, but name some of the real benefits that yoga can have for an individual.
Well, I don't know if I would generally speak to yoga as the kind of general yoga. I think, I can speak more to the Yoga for Golfers program. I mean, our program is based in golf biomechanics. So we talk about how to use gravity and ground reaction forces to generate more power, how to use flow yoga to dynamically warm up your body and prepare yourself, for the explosive movement of the golf swing, which is, if you think about it, right, you have to create explosive movement from a static position. It's quite physically demanding. We use restorative type of yoga to help people post rounds to reduce fatigue and soreness. So I think when I look at the yoga that you can get on in a lot of yoga studios, it's very different than the yoga that we deliver. And some people down dog is a very common yoga position. I very rarely do down dogs because most of my golfers already have extreme C posture, a kyphotic thoracic mobility. And I need to make sure that they are doing more of a cat-cow pose versus a downward facing dog so that we can alleviate that C posture. So everything that we do is based in golf, right? And the other thing is, I would say, whether you're doing a Yoga for Golfers program or just a yoga program, the thing that's most important is that you work with an instructor that understands how to modify for all types of people in the room, that they understand, common golf injuries, how to modify for that, and that they walk around and they do hands-on adjusting. I mean, I don't think it's really good to walk into a room of 60 people with a yoga instructor on a mic who's like banging out some killer, jams, and doesn't really come around and help the individual. Not that those classes are bad. I'm just talking about for our demographic.
Right. No, and I would agree with that. And also, like you said, that you have to have modification in the programs as well, because not everybody, as we know in golf in general, not everybody's built the same and designed the same. Everybody has a uniquely different swing, so it's not always a one size fits all. Even in golf. So, that's extremely important. Cindy, I know that you probably have some questions for Katherine as well.
I have two. The first question is, if there was a program, Yoga for Golfers, in your area, how would you find out about it? How long does the program last? Is it ongoing all the time, all year, or is it specific 6 weeks, 8 weeks? Tell us about that.
Well, on our website, which is yogaforgolfers.com, it's FOR, we have what's called you can go to YFG instructors and you can link on to Find One. And we have a locator there. So you can go there and you can look for an instructor within, a 10-mile radius, 50-mile radius, 100-mile radius. Connect specifically for that instructor in the area. That's one way that we deliver them. Cindy, we're doing... we do clinics, we do ongoing classes, depending on the time of year. They're either outdoors on the back of the range or indoors, in the facility, in the ballroom or in the dining room. But, we just finished, I'll just share this with you. I teach a lot up at True North. I do a lot of work with True Golf. And the director of instruction there, Doug Hammer, and I just did a 4-week ladies power clinic. And it was every Saturday for an hour. We put the ladies on TrackMan on session 1 and session 4. And every woman was able to increase their club head speed by 2 miles per hour, which instantly relates to more distance. We had one woman in 4 weeks that was driving the ball 30 yards further than she was during the first session.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is
so we have
awesome.
Yes.
I'm coming over.
I will come over, Cindy. We always have a spot for you, girl. So anyway, but what I was going to say is that we have, we have clinics going on around the country. We have, ongoing yoga for golfers classes. Like again, up at True North, I teach a class up there on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 4 to 5. Those kinds of sessions are going on all over the country, and people can find out where they are. But I do want to just make one suggestion. If someone is new to yoga or the Yoga for Golfers program, we have a really cool thing on our website. It's called the Golfer's Profile. And what they can do is go to the website, click on the Golfer's Profile. It'll ask you about 15 questions, everything having to do with, your game, what your fitness level, how do you prepare for your round. And based on that, and this is all complimentary, this is all free, based on that Golfer's Profile, the person will instantly receive in their email 10 different Yoga for Golfers progressions that they can do based, again, on their profile and their answers. So if someone says, well, I don't really know where to start, that's a really great place to start.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's important to have in anything you do, whether Yoga for Golfers or whether you're getting ready to take lessons with somebody like Cindy or I. It's always good to have a proper assessment done first, because it's very difficult for the coach or trainer, in your case, to really be able to help somebody if they don't know what they're starting with. So it's always good to do that, and that's a great suggestion. Cindy, sorry,
Yeah.
Go ahead. You had another question?
Yes, and so this is changing the subject. Tell us about your new Human Performance Academy or your new business that you've started.
So, having done this in the golf industry for 17 years, I've also been teaching yoga and Pilates and mindset conditioning in Major League Baseball for 15 years. I currently work for 8 baseball teams, as well as other work that I do training other athletes. So I work with, jiu-jitsu, MMA, Olympic weightlifters, swimmers, triathletes. So what we did was we thought that we wanted to bring everything under kind of what we call a super brand, which is Human Performance for Sports. And to your point, Ted, our tagline is assess, train, perform, because it's very, very rarely will you walk in to have an experience of teaching, of taking, yoga or I will say Pilates or where you are, you need to be assessed, just to your point.
Yeah.
And so we use 3 different types of assessments to train our athletes. And so the Human Performance for Sports program, I think, really even gives a more specific overview of what we really deliver. Again, it's not just the down dog, it's based in the biomechanics of sports. It's also very, very important that people understand that we help train the mind through the breath. And to your point, before I came on, I heard you talking about, being present. Ted, you even said the word one-pointed concentration. And, I can tell you that from doing this for so many years, one of the things that we really see that's the game changer is when people are able to use the breath to slow down the pace of the game, to cultivate one-pointed concentration, to be in total acceptance of whatever that shot is and leave it behind and move on. And this is the thing that we've been coaching our athletes with, again, for, 17, 18 years. And so we felt that creating the human performance, which is what we're doing, we're creating human performance for people that play sports. That's why we developed the new brand.
Can you tell me
and what
us, our listeners, about the 3 different, I'm sorry, Ted, about the 3 different assessments? What do you use?
Yes. Well, one of the assessments we use this is very foundational, and it is assessing gait. It's assessing how you walk. So I have a fellow degree in chain reaction biomechanics, and that's another reason why we're sharing the new initiative of human performance. But one is gait. And so when you think about chain reaction biomechanics. What happens below affects above, and what happens above affects below. So let's say I'm watching someone from behind as they walk, and I'm watching them walk towards me. If they have pronated arches or flat feet, they most often have weak adductors and inner thighs. Now, you might say, well, what does that have to do with anything for sports? When you look at the kinematic sequence, let's just stick to golf, right? When you look at the kinematic sequence, it starts in the feet to the top of your backswing, right? It goes from the feet to the hips to the T-spine to the shoulders and out to the club to the top of the backswing, right? We all in agreement with that?
Absolutely.
Right. So if I have a golfer that I'm working with and they are already starting out with flat feet and weak adductors, I can instantly tell you that they're probably going to have a problem creating an efficient hip turn. So gait is one of the ways that I assess my athletes. The other way that I assess them is in what's called, it's a 3D matrix. So I have them move in an upright position standing in all three planes of motion so I can see, starting in their feet, where they might be lacking in stability or mobility, or what side might, because, golf is an asymmetrical sport just like baseball, where I can see that they might actually be stronger on one side than another side. So then I use this three-dimensional matrix to do it. The third way that I assess my athletes is I use various yoga poses to determine where they might be lacking mobility or stability. So we'll just use a very simple, yoga pose, like a cat-cow pose. Everybody knows what that is, right? You're on your hands and your knees, right, and you arch your back, etc. So I know if they have trouble moving their lumbar and they can't create a posterior tilt, I can pretty much guarantee that through impact, they'll have a challenge creating a posterior tilt, which means they can't activate their glutes, which means that they might be leaking distance.
Wow. So let's say that somebody wants to come to Scottsdale and work with you.
Mm-hmm.
How many days do you need to come?
Right. Well, here's the thing that's really cool, Cindy. I have a huge amount of client base that I train over FaceTime. I have clients in Dubai and South Africa and New York and California and in Wales that I've never met in person that I train weekly over FaceTime.
Wow.
So people can either come to Scottsdale, and if they came to Scottsdale, I'd probably want to spend 2 days with them. But we also have what's called live remote packages over, and you can purchase them on my website at Yoga for Golfers. You can purchase them on the website, which, by the way, with the holidays coming up, is a fantastic gift to the golfer in your life. Buy them like a package of 4 or 8 or something. And I'm training people all over the world. And it's, what's great is that if you have somebody in your life that travels, or for you, listening, if you travel, I can train you in a hotel room. It doesn't matter where you are.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was actually the question I was going to ask.
Website.
Yeah, me too. That was actually the question I was going to ask you, Katherine, was, for those that maybe can't go to a facility or maybe under time restrictions, is this something that they can do as well? Like, let's say you have certain sessions that they can purchase and FaceTime with, but let's say they're very, the way their job is structured, that maybe their hours are such that they might have to do it at odd hours. Is there a way for folks like that to engage in your program as well?
Yeah, excuse me, yes, for sure. So what I do with the clients that I train on FaceTime is I have an app. And what I'll do is I'll upload an app with their exercises on the app. That's also all part of the live remote coaching package. And the only people that have access to that app are myself and that individual, or potentially their swing coach. Because the other thing, too, is that I really like to create a team around my athletes. So when I'm working with a golfer, I absolutely have to see their swing. I like to see driver, 7-iron, and putter face on and down the line. And then based on and I will assess them over FaceTime, and then I will create their program on their app. So no matter where they are in the world, they can practice it on their own. The other thing I would say is that for people that aren't interested in the live remote coaching, we also have digital media. We have instant videos for sale on the website We just did two new ones. One is it's called the Birdie Series, and one is developing a more balanced swing, and one is how to generate more endurance through your round, which I will say in parts of the world that are cold right now, those are two instant videos that would be very important to get, because you don't want to have spring roll around and you've been sitting around all winter and it takes you 6 weeks to get ready when you have a short season. You need to be working on your game during the winter months so that, you're ready for the first tee, when after the first frost,
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you, Katherine, this is something that I'm sure you get faced with a lot, and I know you know how to handle this, so that's why I'm sort of setting you up for it. But, somebody that maybe is in their 60s might be listening to this and thinking, well, exercise or that sort of thing, I'm a little too old for that. Explain why that's not the case, why this is something for people of all ages.
Well, I'll tell you why it's not the case. It's not the case because the way that we deliver the programs are all in building blocks. So, we offer modifications. I will say, if this position is good for you, stay here. If there's a little bit more, go there. If there's a little bit more, go there. And that's how I teach, whether it's in person, over FaceTime, on the DVDs, on the digital media content. That's just the way that I've been teaching for 20 years. Now, I'll also tell you, too, it's really interesting that like the Yoga for Golfers class we have going on right now at True North, we have the youngest client is 62 and the oldest one is 75.
Wow.
And twice a week, they come marching onto the back of the range, and they all have a yoga mat and a yoga block and a yoga strap and a 7-iron. And they, for years, and they never miss class. They've created community. They've now become friends. They play golf together. So I think it's never too late. But, to your point, Ted, I think that's why a lot of people don't start, especially when you think about yoga, because number one, nobody wants to be embarrassed. Number two, nobody wants to get injured. And number three, they think it's going to be too hard. And the truth is, for some people, that is what they experience, but that's not what they experience in a Yoga for Golfers program.
Yeah, it's very low impact. I mean, and that's what's nice about it is that it's designed in such a way. It's not like somebody's lifting heavy weights. One of the biggest problems that I see, Katherine, with people that get into some sort of a fitness program, especially for the guy, I'll preface this and say it's mainly the guys that have this issue, but they get into a weight program and they think, okay, well, I'm going to bulk up a little bit, and really that's not conducive to playing good golf. Certainly you want to develop muscles and that, but they need to be developed the right way, and that's really something that you do as well. I mean, you're not necessarily into muscle development, but you're into muscle strengthening, if you will, to allow them to be able, and core strengthening, that sort of thing that is going to help them obviously translate that out in the golf course, correct?
Absolutely. I'm a proponent of lifting weights for golf if it's done correctly. But let me tell you that when you learn to use the force of gravity to create ground reaction forces, you are getting stronger, whether it's in some type of plank position or a standing yoga pose. When you learn to use the ground, you would be amazed how strong you get. The other thing I wanted to say is, one of the things that, especially like this group of guys that I was just referring to, and we have ladies in that group as well, but 62 to 75, I think the single most important piece of feedback we get is that their balance becomes exponentially better.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so
important.
That's
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's extremely important, especially in our sport. Cindy, I know you probably maybe have another question or two.
I'm flabbergasted at what you've done and created, and I'm so thrilled. And I am definitely going to the website because I need to get better. I'm getting older, and I need to get stronger, and I need to pay attention. So I thank you for being our guest.
Oh, well, thank you, Cindy. And, I just wanted to say something very briefly, that I think one of the things that I see with women that we are really able to do is we're able to get them stronger. For example, with this ladies' power clinic that I was sharing with you, I think that some women seem to feel like, oh, I need to get more flexible. I'm going to make a gross generalization here, so please forgive me. But the gross generalization is most women need to get stronger, not more flexible, right? And they need to know how to really use the ground and to coil efficiently and more powerfully. Now, again, that's a gross generalization. I have another girl that's playing on the mini tour right now, and oh my God, and this is to the point of the younger female players. She is mind-blowingly powerful. And so I think it's, when you get kind of over a certain age, what we need to do is create that balance of flexibility, but help women to really harness their power.
Katherine, I want to ask you a question. You actually mentioned this one night when you were on the other show with me, Golf Talk Live, and we talked about this. And I want you just to explain a little bit, because this is something that happens to a lot of people as we age. You talked about the importance of the feet, not just being flat-footed and that, but you talked about as we get older, how we don't feel the same as we walk. Obviously, our nerves and our sensitivities are different, and that happens as people get older. Explain the importance and why, because obviously that's why you see a lot of seniors shuffle. And you talked about that and raised a very interesting point one night on a Coach's Corner panel. Can you explain a little bit more what I'm getting at?
Yeah, what I was referring to is the concept of proprioception. And proprioception is understanding where your body is in space. Being able to feel where your body is in space. And what happens is that as we start to get older, that level of proprioception becomes less and less. And so, that's why when you start to see people that are a bit older, they don't really use their feet as much, so they don't feel the connection to the ground. Right. And so then they start to get worried about falling. And then, as the feet start to fall, and then as the upper back starts to get more rounded and the vision starts to then not be on the horizon, but to be now focused down on the ground as they're walking, that's when you start to see people as they get older start to shuffle, because they're not cultivating their proprioception. Now, let me just take it right into golf, So the proprioception is understanding, is you can connect it to the concept of feel, right? So if I'm out on the golf course and I'm trying to make a correction in the top of my backswing, and I'm not standing in front of a mirror, which, by the way, is why we don't use mirrors when we teach yoga for golfers, because I want people to learn how to feel it instead of seeing it. It gives them that awareness, that proprioception, that they can make their own corrections when they're out on the course. But so it relates to golf, but it also relates to life.
Yeah, and
great.
I like that point. Yeah, I like that point. One final thing real quick, Katherine, and I know we need to let you go. There's obviously a nutritional component to this as well. We need to make sure. Now, I know you may or may not get specifically into that, but I'm sure you do give some advice to your students in that. Obviously, eating better is going to ultimately yield some better results in whatever we do. Is that something that you try to incorporate a little bit into your yoga for golfers, as explaining the importance of good nutrition as well, or do you have folks around you that you may refer that discussion to?
Yeah, I think whether I would refer it out or not would depend on the level of demand of that specific athlete. I am not a nutritionist, transparently, but I know a lot about nutrition from doing this for, my whole life.
Right.
I think, people have heard this, just in terms of going out and playing golf, you just want to make sure that you're eating foods that have a low glycemic level. It's funny, I'm training a kid right now, and he's on the mini tour as well. And so we were talking about nutrition the other day. And he said, well, I don't eat until noon, and if I do eat, I just have a bagel. And then he goes out to play 18 holes, and he can't understand why he can't maintain his focus. Right. I mean, there's a direct correlation, and I can just tie it, just in terms of the importance of it, I can tie it into baseball. All of my Major League Baseball teams, when I first started, a player would walk out of the locker room with a frosted flakes and think that was nutrition. Now all the teams have nutritionists on staff. The nutrition is a huge component, not just to, obviously for life, but also for, for performance. For me personally, when I go out on the course, I always have, almonds. I might have a little thing of string cheese. I'll have a cut up apple. Because for me, I kind of need to eat every 2 hours. And so
sure.
if I'm not on the course and there's some slow play, I'm going to start to get angry, and you're not going to like that if I don't have food.
I like that.
Yeah, we hear you. We know, we can relate to that. Well, listen, Katherine, we know you got to go, and we have to wrap up too. But just very quickly, let the folks know if they want to get more information, where they can go. You have multiple websites, obviously, but where they can go to learn more about yoga for golfers, and maybe also the Human Performance website as well.
Right. Well, if you're looking to we'll get more information on the Yoga for Golfers methodologies. You can go to yogaforgolfers.com, FOR. We also have a lot of information, more in-depth information, really on our methodologies as it relates to sports. On the it's humanperformanceforsports.com. You can purchase all the products and the programs on either website. But if you're just looking for golf, I would go to the golf site. But if you also have, people in your life that play other sports and you're interested in those methodologies, or you want to send a coach there, then Human Performance for Sports is definitely the way to go.
And also, for those that maybe are interested in the certification process, can also contact you through those websites as well, right?
Absolutely. So the Yoga for Golfers certification is done live, but it's also available online. That's why we have teachers all over the world that are getting certified. We have level 1 and level 2 online as well. And then the Human Performance for Sports certification will be in April in Scottsdale, and they can register for that on the Human Performance for Sports site.
Perfect. Well, Katherine, we want to thank you for joining us this morning on the Women of Golf. We appreciate you taking time out. And you always have an open invitation to come back anytime when your schedule permits. So continue with the success and great websites as well. And I'm going to visit your Yoga for Golfers website as soon as we're done here and see what I can do. But thank you for joining us this morning, Katherine.
Thank you, Ted. Thank you,
Katherine.
Cindy. Have a great day.
So good to talk to you. Thanks.
You too, hon. Okay, bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye. All right, that was our very special guest, Katherine Roberts, founder and president of Yoga for Golfers. Go to Yoga for Golfers, that's FOR, golfers.com, and also Human Performance for Sports.com, as well as our other site that you can check out as well. Well, Cindy, we got to wrap it up. I know you've got a lesson to head to, and as always, we are very grateful to our audience for tuning in faithfully each and every week, and our continues to grow each and every week as well. So we thank you for that. Please help spread the word. You can get us on blogtalkradio.com, or you can get us at itunes.com or stitcher.com, or three of our network platforms that you can tune into the show. So make sure you do that. And we've only got a few shows left for 2017. Our last show is going to be December 12th. Will be our last episode that will be airing for this year, and then we'll be firing back up in February after an extended break as we prepare for 2018. So February 6th will be the start date for the Women of Golf for next season. So we hope you'll continue to listen to the rest of this season, and you'll jump right back in next season and take advantage of the period in between to maybe listen to some episodes that you haven't listened to. So on behalf of Cindy Miller and I'm Ted Odorico. Thank you for joining us here on the Women of Golf, and we will see you next Tuesday right here on the Women of Golf. Thanks. Have a great week. Bye, Cindy.
Thanks, Ted. Bye-bye.